Good morning. Good morning, Mark.
Morning.
Oops. I don't want to do that. I had an echo.
What'd I do?
You didn't. I did it. And I turned the light on. Now I've got a funny cast of my skin. I look jaundiced. Is that bright?
It's that light bouncing off that Ukraine flag.
Well, it could be. Except it's on.
Yeah, that's where the yellow's coming from.
My camera's turned a little bit or something. I'm off kilter this morning. Good morning, Tina and Carol and Mike Cabral. Good to see you. Good morning, Dave. Adventures by D. Oh, okay. Well, that's fine. He's watching. He's ninja watching. He can't turn up the volume. Francisco. Good morning, buddy. Francisco. That is fun to say. Francisco. Oops, now I got to fix my microphone back. I have a bag of lead shot holding it. So it sets a certain way for me now. It's not up in my way anymore. Only I would have bought a bag of lead shot. Actually, a bag of lead shot might be, but a bag like this is not as common.
I'm using a bag of lead shot. Yeah, that's not what I was thinking. You had like one of those canvas bags full of lead shot.
Well, I figured that's why I held it up. It's more like a shot bag than a
Got it.
Shot. That's for muzzle loading shotgun.
To shoot out of that thing of curlies that we couldn't hit nothing with.
Yeah, well, maybe shot was a little better, but
not a lot.
That was the strangest thing, man. Neither one of us bad shots, and neither one of us could hit anything with that gun. Those guns.
Yeah, it was the barrel. The barrels on those were crap.
Obviously, they were, right?
Yeah, they were too thin, and they would warp in the heat. You know, if you shot them a few times, they'd start kind of warping a little, and you just couldn't do anything with them.
That must have been it, because
well, the sidewalls on Dad's barrels are significantly thicker.
Well, most people's were that I ever picked up. They were very thin.
They shot fine.
Have you got one of his? Do you have one of his smoothbore rifles?
Mm-hmm.
Did it shoot pretty good?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a shooter.
Mike Cabral wants to know if I have a Canadian flag. I do not, Mike. I'll be honest with you, except for the Ukrainian flag, which you can't even see my hands. Except for this flag, everything I've got up there is related to my ancestry. So far, I've not found any of my people that came through Canada. Now, they may have. And if they ever do, and I find out, I will put it up there, because I don't have any problem with that. And when I get enough, I'm going to start doing a new show called Fun with Flags 2.
And you could do that with your hand.
I need to practice on that to make sure I get it right. And here's my Scottish flag.
Tim Pruitt with Fun with Flags.
and guess what's her name? He put that. He used to give her really low second billing. Oh man, all about
Amy Fair Fowler.
Professor Amy Fair Fowler assistant or something like that. He put her way down there on the slide.
That's a handle.
Yeah. But that's what the deal is, Mike. But like I said, give me a good reason, I'll put her up there. I should put one up there for our good neighbors to the north. I wouldn't doubt that some of my folks didn't come through Canada, but so far I've not tracked that down. Or Brenda's, for that matter. Most of these flags, as it turns out, represent mine and Brenda's ancestry for the most part. In fact, we're probably not so far off from having a Ukrainian flag. Good morning, Nicole. and welcome. That's not a squirrel. We ain't got that far yet, Tina. That don't count. In fact, if you read the sign for this morning, you'll know that that's not far off the count at all, or not off the track at all, because we're going to talk about some of that today. That's something that my spouse does, and has she said hello? She's probably. I just yelled at her, but I bet she's going back to bed, taking a nap. She had to get up earlier this morning. You know what neighbor I'm going to send you? You do that, Mike, and I'll hang her up here proudly. I'll do that for you. Any goats? No goats. I'm not sure what that. I don't know if Brenda? Oops, sorry. I just talked to her. Surely she's online or getting online. She just finished up an order the other day. She had a lady send her a box of. Hang on a minute. I'm going to make sure I get this right. I'm sitting here talking and nobody hears me. Anyway, I don't know what you heard. Anyway, this young Brenda, you correct me if I'm wrong. This young lady sent her a house coat that belonged to her grandmother, and it really meant a lot to her. So she wanted to know if Brenda could make her an apron out of it, and she did, and sent it to her. And that young lady may be today on board a submarine somewhere in the vast world of water that we live in, because she's on a nuclear sub. And so I think it was her mother liked that a lot. And so here a couple months ago, she contacted Brenda and wanted to know if she would consider making her some aprons out of shirts from, I guess, her husband or maybe her grandfather. I'm not sure. And you too, Mike. Thanks for stopping by. Good luck in Canada. And she wanted her to make some aprons out of these long sleeve, these shirts that their grandfather had worn. And I guess for her grandchildren, so I guess it was her husband. And so she sent them to her, and Brenda made a bunch of small aprons out of these shirts. They looked really neat because she kept like the buttons down the front and just cut out the sides and, did them that way. And then she took the scraps she had left over and made little pillows for them. And that was for each kid got an apron, got a pillow, something to that effect. Brenda, you're welcome to explain that. If you have a picture on your phone, your computer, you're welcome to send it to me and I'll share it. No advertising, please. Pshaw, I'm tired of hearing you hide your candle under a basket or whatever they call it. Anyway, she just sent those off. So Yeah, Tina, tell get on her. She needs to advertise just a tiny bit. It's not like she does any now, and it's free. She's my only sponsor, and she won't let me do an advertisement. This today's show brought to you by Sunny Windows Creations, owned and operated by Brenda Pruitt. Aprons of all kinds. I'm having to do this on the fly. So anyway, that's
But wait,
if
you order one now,
you can get two
for twice the cost.
For twice the cost and half the shipping. For two, that is. Buy one for $19.95 and get two for $40.45. Get on her, Tina. She needs to, share them around a little bit. She does good work. See that, Brenda? Tina needs a spring and summer one. She used to make shirts for me, and Mark's probably worn a few of her shirts. She used to make shirts that I took up to rendezvous and things and wore and sold, and so she's probably got stuff all over the country. Maybe those may long be gone. They may have been long worn out. I've got one that's so old and faded it's almost white instead of blue calico now. Blue calico. Well, not is it calico? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess it's calico. Mm-hmm. I want to think what's the checkered one's called, but I don't. That's not calico. That's checkered, I suppose. I was waiting to see if a couple of more people got here. Once I get my computer. Yeah, I do that, Tina. Thank you. Chambray. I don't know, Tina. You probably know more about it than I do in that regard. I just know a few things when it comes to sewing. I know that sewing machines are magic. I know that
they're magic.
There's cotton and synthetics. There's there's wool. There's silk. There's stretchy stuff and not so stretchy stuff. That's about what I know. I know I wish I had I've been trying to get Brenda for years. I keep looking for one. I'd like to find a cheap commercial, an old heavy duty commercial machine so she can sew more stuff for me. Which is not what she wants to hear. Every time I come up with a new idea, she rolls her eyes. I can hear them clank. When I come up and say, I had an idea. Can you sew this? And she turns me off for some reason. And she's made me a tent, a sleeping bag, really nice tent. You've slept in that tent. I'm pretty sure. I think, maybe not, but maybe. A lot of clothes and a lot of rendezvous period clothing for myself and others. Anyway, she does a good job with a sewing machine. She's pretty handy like that. Which is your wife also sews, does she not?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I thought she does, and crochets too, I believe.
That's the crochet and things. She's making like 14 gazillion grandkid stuffed animals. She makes them every year, it seems like. She's got a whole stack of them in there right now for Easter coming up.
Oh boy.
What? That's just what them kids needs, another bunch of stuffed animals to pack around.
Well, sure they do. Why am I yellow today? I can't figure this out.
It's that flat. I'm telling you, it's that light shining.
You know what? I bet you're right. That changes that, and actually that light blue right there.
Yeah,
affects my lighting too. When I wear a blue shirt like that, I go yellow. So that's probably what it is. And I got the bright sun coming in over here, and I turned that light off though. I don't know. I don't think that'll.
That just made it worse. You put even more light on that yellow stripe.
That's true. Yeah.
It's just bouncing off of that.
I'm just gonna turn that plumb off. I don't know if that's better or worse. I'm gonna leave it like that for now. Anyway, I'm gonna chase the squirrel. Tina's not here. We'll count this when she gets back. But I've tried something different, guys. I've declared chemical warfare against my squirrels. They rascals got into one of my feeders that I didn't think they could get into. They've actually worried the wall or one of the openings plumb off the wire. They haven't eaten into it like they do with plastic, but they've tugged and they pulled and they pulled and they've tugged until they finally got it off. I'm not sure what they expect to gain by that. A bigger hole to eat out of, I suppose. But so I came in yesterday and mixed up some with some hot peppers. And so far it seems to be doing a good job. I've seen them, they stick their nose in there now and they pull back and they kind of go like this. Brenda says I'm kind of a high yeller. So I'm testing it. This is the first. I've read about people using pepper, and you can actually buy birdseed with pepper in it for this very reason. And I'm still feeding squirrels, but I'm feeding them in their own place. I'm not feeding them my birdseed. So hopefully it's going to work. Now I just got to make sure the birds are the birds have been there, and it shouldn't bother them at all. But I will see. It's the high bird feeding time hasn't hit in my backyard yet. Squirrels usually come in early, and then towards the middle of the day, the birds get thicker, and the birds may be up in Brenda's side of the house right now. They kind of move around. Babe, what have you got up there? Have you looked out lately? Just to see. Anywho, so let's see. I don't know if Carol's here or if Carol's out driving. Did she mention that? I know she came in, but I don't know if she was driving her car. She said hi to you. And I don't think she said hi to me. She might have. Oh, there she is. Morning, Tim. Yeah, I'll be joining chat in about 30 minutes. But she's listening. So she's out there. We're going to talk a little bit about ancestry today. Just, I don't know. I didn't do a bunch of slides. In fact, I didn't do any slides except for this one. And because I just wanted to talk about it. It's something I've kind of always wanted to do. And it's something that I will give full credit to my wife for getting me more involved. She's been doing a lot of the legwork so far because she got involved in it for, family reasons and stuff. But we did the DNA testing. Pretty empty up there. Okay. What about squirrels? Any squirrels? Or actually, there's not even any. I've only seen one or two goldfinches, and the goldfinches don't have pepper on their food, so that's why I know it's not the pepper keeping the birds out. It's something.
Hi, John.
Something. Hey, John. Good morning. There's something else going on there, but well, it is cold this morning. That's true too. The squirrels like a cool morning and they get real active, and they're out here, but they're, like I said, they're staying on their own feeder. So far so good.
What's cold? Is it did you guys get a storm or something?
We had a front. That front came through, with all that stormy weather.
Yeah.
And behind that was some colder weather. It went from, again, 60s and 70s to 30s, upper 20s. And it dropped yesterday. You could feel it going down. I had a cardinal out there a few minutes ago, Tina, but he left. I think the squirrels are running him off. There's birds on my feeders now. So it's about time for the shift change, as they would say in Looney Tunes. I used to love those Coyote and
the sheepdog
cartoons. And they punched the clock.
Morning, Ralph.
Morning, Ralph. Yeah. They punch a clock and go in. And yeah, those were great. Those were just classic, funny cartoons.
Indeed.
I don't care what anybody says or thinks. I know Mark, well, and Mark hasn't, I guess, done this, but, well, I don't know if he did or not. But Brenda decided she was going to do the DNA thing, so we had DNA tests running. I was very disappointed at first in mine because they didn't turn up anything really exciting. I mean, I couldn't be much more lily white if I had to be. But I did turn out that I've got a lot of Scandinavian and then Irish and Scottish and Welsh, and I'm sure there's some English mixed in there too. But I have to deal with that. That's the shame of my family. And Brenda had a lot of Eastern European, I think, and I've got some Mediterranean too, but that's a smaller percentage. But I'll talk about that in a minute. But there was nothing sub-Saharan and nothing Native American that came up, which is, for me, that's a real disappointment. I would have been proud of that. But I do like my Viking heritage, and I haven't put any flags up for that yet, but I'm not sure exactly where. Just Scandinavian, through Sweden and Norway, I think, but I don't know much more than that. But we've traced it back also, genealogy. Brenda's been tracking things there for a few years now, off and on. And I know that I've tracked my ancestors from the United States over to Scotland and Ireland and Wales. And just got to looking at some Scottish connections that aren't too far out. So makes it a little easy. If you look at one that says, "Oh, you're Scottish back in the 13th century or the 10th century or something," that's kind of back there. But when it's just the last century or maybe the last two, it feels a lot closer. And you did that test, John. How did it turn out for you? If you want to say, you don't have to. Yeah, I think that's true, Tina. A lot of friends going on. Well, except maybe some of the early ones. The Vikings might have come over, pillaging and plundering, but that's just how they were. They made some cool knives, which is a whole other topic I was thinking about. I watched the Battle of the Five Armies again last night. Man, I'd like to have a couple of those elfin blades. Those are cool. But anyway, I digress.
The Hobbit?
Well, yeah, The Hobbit, the Battle of the Five Armies, the made up part of
the last one.
The last one, yes.
Yeah.
The last Hobbit movie. I mean, they made 3 movies out of one book, and I guess there was a battle, but
it's a great chapter in the book.
Well, yeah, but that's about all. I mean, it's not. The movie was 3 or 4 hours long. They made a whole nother movie just for that, which I guess is okay. I mean, like I said, I like the movie. It's not that I don't like it. It's just a little bit. I'm not a purist when it comes to some of that stuff, so it doesn't bother me if they deviate a bit because they made good movies. So, the first 3 movies I thought were excellent, and I like the Hobbit movies. I'd still like the whole storyline. It may vary a little bit, but. And I'm a big fan of Bjorn, so
of course.
Imagine that.
Yeah,
I like it in the Five Armies movie when the eagles drop him and he comes down and turns into a big bear and just starts ripping through the orc army or goblins or whatever those guys were. Those guys were kind of nasty looking. Again, you can count that, Tina. That's a squirrel. Anyway. So it's been kind of fun to do that. I found out, like, for example, it's either my great-grandfather or maybe my great-great-grandfather. But in 1850, earlys, 51 or 53. I actually kind of found, I can't tell that for sure. He came over from Ireland, and I'm sure that was probably a result of the potato famine, because as Stephen Colbert might say, it's potato, it's potato. So they kind of came over at the end of the potato famine, but that wasn't too far back at all. That was in 1853, and they came over here and somehow managed to go from Ireland all the way down to the Clinch Valley or the Clinch River Valley. They were just over the mountain or up the road here in Wartburg, which is 30 miles from here or so. And settle in is what I find interesting about that is they came over as Roman Catholics. So they were probably leaving the potato famine and all the oppression they were facing at that time from the Church of England and the English rule. And came over here and I guess turned into Methodist or Baptist or something because there wasn't any Catholics over there. And, and came right down. That's on my grandmother's line. So they're not, like I said, they're not far back at all. My great uncle or my great grandfather, James, was Irish. Then I found out this week, at least it looks like, by tracking the genealogy stuff, that I had an uncle, a great back there somewhere that was a captain, sea captain. He owned, I think he owned some ships. He sailed out of Scotland. I can't remember the city right this minute. And he was a Stedman, which it looks like he might have been allied with the Campbell clan, I believe. So I got to figure out now if I like them or I don't like them. But there's a possibility of Stewarts in there too, and that's almost like two opposites, I think. But I'm not sure about that. You might have studied that a lot more than me. I'm working on that.
Yeah, I don't know who was. There's always shifting loyalties.
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
Some of them did tend to move around from time to time.
I think in general, I think the Campbells and the Stewarts probably didn't like each other too much, but I'm not sure that was always the case.
Well, I know there was a Stewart that became King of England, if I'm not mistaken, at least for a little while.
Yeah, I don't remember.
No, that's two. We'll call that two, Tina. Surf Bum said John says he was Dutch, Scottish, English, French, and Italian, which was a surprise. But the area my mom lived was once occupied by the Roman Empire. Well, there you go. That could very well explain that. Yeah. Which is actually probably true in some degree for myself. I mean, they were all over the British Isles at one time or another. Well, at least up to Hadrian's Wall, and then my Scots ancestors were chucking rocks at them. I'm pretty sure my Viking ancestors. What I'm trying to find, what I believe, and may not end up being proven, I'm still working on this, but I believe that my mom's family is linked to the Melungeon people, which are a group of people that live mostly or were at least mostly in the mountainous parts of Tennessee, in this area actually, that they believe might have been descendants of the Portuguese and Native American and other things that moved in here that might have been here before most of the other settlers came in, and that's an interesting topic. It's they've proven more and more about them now, and they were not treated very well as a rule, and a lot of them lived in Hawkins County, which is where my mom's from, and there is some Mediterranean kicks in my DNA, which is where they were from. All my mom's family had dark skin, olive complected skin, and really black hair, and and some other traits that were all linked with that race of people or that group of people. And I still believe that somewhere in there's some Melungeon links, and I've got to find them by name or something. Well, see, that's cool, Tina. I would like see. I would like to have that. Wasn't that? Which one was James, babe? Let's see. Tina also said she's got German. Well, I might got some German in there too. Probably some Dutch. I don't know, but it looks like most of my people ended up in the somewhere in the Isles. Yeah, I was thinking that the Stuarts, one of the Stuarts, eventually became king of Scotland or king of England, and I can't remember. I read up on that just a couple nights ago, and my mind's not racing. I've not had enough coffee yet, maybe. But
Well, wasn't Bonnie Prince Charlie a Stuart? Maybe
he
not.
might have been. I don't know, but I thought Bonnie Prince Charlie was a. He might have been since he became king of England. They might have liked him.
Well, they didn't want him to be king of Scotland or England.
Who didn't?
The Brits.
Yeah, the Brits. No, the Brits didn't. That's what I'm saying. So the Stuarts might have been. That, yeah, I think so. And that might he might be the one.
I think he had some kind of a genetic link to the throne.
Yes, he did.
And they didn't want him anyway. The Battle of Culloden and all that stuff happened because he was trying to come back into power.
What did my wife say here? She said something. I have to bow to her. She's done most of the leg. She's done a lot of the leg work on this, and we just found there's some grave sites not far from here that we need to go look at and find that are historic. She has a map, and she'll have to correct me, but she has a map that came from family that looks to be a land grant from the Revolutionary War or the War of 1812 for this area. It marks, it calls out creeks and trees and that kind of stuff, and it's north of here a little bit, north and west, and it's, well, not too far west actually. It's kind of in Knoxville now, what is now Knoxville, but it's kind of interesting because by the creeks and things, I kind of know. I figured out where it was at one time. James the First was a Stuart, according to Alexa. Okay, well, that may be it. I know. I just read about it, and because that's another thing. I'm trying. I want to buy a kilt. I've always wanted to try a kilt, but I never was sure I could legally wear it. And by legally,
you had the legs for it.
Oh, I got the legs for it. That ain't a problem. I've had the legs for it. No, I wanted to make sure I had the blood for it. I don't know. I felt funny about wearing one if I didn't have any Scots in me. And of course, now I know I've got
Welsh and Irish wore them too.
Huh?
The Welsh and Irish wore them.
Well, I know that now. I mean, I know all that now. All that's been confirmed. So I'm thinking about getting a kilt, a utility kilt, actually, that's got also got some Irish plaid in it, because there is a tartan for the Irish. It's kind of a generic thing. It's broken up like the Scots were. And oh, does he, Tina? That's cool. What is just Mark has a kilt also. I'm a little jealous. Mark got married in a kilt, so that's kind of special. Tell them about your kilt, because you've got a special kilt. I mean,
it's a family kilt. It's I'm related to the McPherson clan, and I got their hunting tartan. Most clans have multiple tartans, and I like the hunting tartan the best, and I got it's a great kilt. It's the, what is that? The whole 9 yards. It's 9 yards of cloth, and you got to put it on a certain way, and it's the most comfortable garment I've ever had on in my life.
Even better than a loincloth?
Even better than a breech claw.
Oh wow, that's saying something because once you start wearing a breech clout, they're actually pretty
You
good.
don't want to go back to like modern human
No,
clothes.
you don't want to go back to real breeches. It's
Wow.
a breech clout and leggings is pretty handy, especially in the summer.
Yeah.
That's what they say about a kilt. You know, you see a lot of kilts on Forest and Fire. A lot of those guys, and a lot of them say that's why. You know, it gives pretty good protection, and it is a lot cooler than a battle. I read something. Brenda's now talking battles and war. Dang her. But Mark's kilt is a great kilt, and if you don't know, that's basically just a 9 yards of cloth. I don't know what the width is. I guess that depends on how long you want it to hang down or not.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't remember exactly how wide it is, but yeah.
But it's not 50 or 60 inches, is it?
Well, I'll
Oh,
have
no, it could be.
I'll have to go get it, but you can use it as a cape. I mean, you got your like this, kind of skirt portion of it, and then you got like a lot of extra cloth that goes up and over your shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
You can situate that to where that makes like a complete, almost like a poncho, with a hood on it, and it's a pretty handy. If you don't worry about your legs getting a little cool, it's a pretty handy garment.
That's what you wear That's what you wear wool socks for.
Yeah,
Or stockings or whatever they call them at that time. Hosiery. What's interesting about them is, to me, and I didn't realize this at all, but they're not sewn. There's nothing sewn on it, is there? I mean, you have to lay it down.
It's just 9 yards of cloth.
Yeah,
there's no stitches. There's nothing.
It's belted. You wear it with a belt.
Yeah.
You lay the belt down on the ground, then you lay the cloth down on the ground or on the floor or whatever, and you pleat it while it's laying there. Hey, Don,
like an accordion.
And then you lay down on it and roll it up around you and buckle the belt, and then you put the other part, fling it over your shoulder or whatever.
That's it.
I mean, that's what I find. I didn't realize that. I thought there was some part of it that was structured, actually sewn up, and it's not. It's just you lay down on it.
I mean, the great kilt. Now the later ones are tailored.
Oh, sure they are, and there's some that are highly tailored for that matter. But
yeah, I might like the guy that stood up with me, my best man at the wedding. He had like the what do they call that cap that they wear? His was much more structured. A later version,
right.
Highly tailored, and he had the Argyle socks and the whole nine, that whole 9 yards. He had all the fancy stuff.
Did he wear your tartan, or did he wear one of his?
No, he wore his.
He is okay.
Yeah,
that's the cool part about it. I mean, it's
and then Sam, my stepson, he wore his tartan, and our preacher, he wore his tartan.
That's excellent.
Yeah, so there were 4 different tartans at my wedding, and we didn't kill each other or nothing. We didn't get the claymores out and start swinging swords or nothing. We all got along.
Well, I guess that's a good thing. Your wife wouldn't have liked it if you'd spilled blood at the wedding.
Yeah, I took my oath on a dirk.
No, that's cool.
And my wife wasn't quite sure what that was about when I, pulled this big blade out of my belt. And bless her heart, she just got our wedding book out, and we're cowboys, so here's kind of I don't know if you can see that or not.
Yeah, well, I can see it. Just hold it about right there. That's
And I had on moccasins to boot.
well, of course you did.
But we didn't always have cowboy hats on. We did it. This was after the fact. I'm trying to find. I don't know if I got a picture of the actual. Now there's a. I don't know if you can see that or not, but I'm taking my oath right here on this.
Who has the dirk? You or
I do.
for those
Anyway,
for those that don't know, a dirk was a
big old dagger.
big old dagger, knife, short sword. I guess they've been called different things by different people, but some of them they vary in size a bit. But those are traditional Scottish sidearm at the time. That and a skin do, which is like the little knife you put in your stocking. And you know that there is still a law to this day that Scottish men are either allowed or supposed to carry one at all times. That's a Scottish thing, and which makes the Brits a little leery of them sometimes. But I think we had that discussion. You wouldn't have been here, but in another chat one time, there's a fellow that used to come in a lot from Scotland, and then a couple of guys that are from England that were on, and that subject came up. the dirk or the skin do carrying, and which is skin do is about yay big, but usually matches the dirk, or a lot of them do, but not all of them, I guess. But
it's almost like a little stiletto kind of
a
dagger, eating knife or whatever. It's
something to eat with. Yeah, exactly.
But a fixed blade.
Yeah, they're all fixed blades. And I don't know if there was any particular pattern that was attributed to clans or family for that, but they're pretty neat. Pretty neat. Daggers have always been important and historically in different cultures. I have to admit, I guess that's where I get my love of blades. Get me a little coffee break here just for a second. So we've managed to trace our heritage back. So far, we're pretty confident to the Scots. Brenda, in fact, no, I'm not going to say in fact. I'm not sure that Brenda, if you're still listening, did you trace? Do you think you might have traced your family back to Robert the Bruce, or am I dreaming that? I can't remember. Robert the Bruce. That may not be true, but I might be thinking of somebody else. But that would be cool.
William the Wallace.
Well, now Brenda does trace hers back to Wallace's, and so who knows? Maybe she is kin to William Wallace. That would be kind of cool too. Not because of Mel Gibson, but because of William Wallace. A lot of people really like that movie, as we've discussed. It wasn't entirely accurate, but it was still, I guess, fun, at least till the end. Mark recently sent me a card or a picture that said that was guy painted up in blue and white. His face was blue and white, and at first I wasn't sure what was going on until it said, on St. Patrick's Day, everybody wants to be Irish, except for the Scottish. We're still Scottish. So, Carol says her cousin's named after Robert the Bruce. So is his name Robert or Bruce or both? Robert the Bruce. That's pretty cool, Carol. So have you traced your genealogy back any? I mean, does that indicate that you are kin to the Scots, or you are Scottish, or does that just somebody like that? I mean, that happens too, and I'm not knocking it. I'm just saying, there's a lot of kids out there with Irish names may or may not have a link. There's Brenda's Etsy shop. Thank you, Tina. First name Robert, middle name Bruce. Well, that's cool. My parents didn't get nearly that creative with it. Then again, they probably didn't even think about it much. What I find fascinating about that is the fact that I live in an area where growing up, I didn't even know there was such a thing as a Catholic. And I'm not knocking Catholics. This isn't a religious discussion at all. But you just didn't see it. I mean, most people in this part of the country were Presbyterians or Baptists or Methodist or Holy Rollers or Pentecostal or snake handlers, and Catholics were kind of just somebody you heard of. I mean, I guess I heard about them, but I really didn't know him until I was in high school. And then to find out that my grandparents or great grandparents came over here as Catholics, and that it says on their immigration forms what they always put that on there, religious affiliations, I guess, and so they were listed as Roman Catholic, or I don't think it said Irish Catholic. I think it just said Roman Catholic. And I just wonder how long it took them out there in the Hicks, the sticks of Tennessee, to convert over to a Protestant religion, and whether they were forced to or just did. I'd really like to know the answer to that, because if you're a Catholic in Ireland and you fought the British or you have been opposing British rule over there, most of the time you don't get along that well with Protestants. So I just really wonder how that all worked out. I'd like to know some history on that part. I probably never know it now, but maybe someday I will. William is in my family name from my great grandfather, William. Is that pronounced McGee or McGee or what, John? My middle name is William and the son is William. We call him Billy, and my dad is Kenneth William. Well, that's a good way to keep it going. You could be. Did you say your father was William? Kenneth William. So you could have been William's son and just continued it from there. It's a Scandinavian way. He's all Presbyterian for this. Well, some of them might be, Tina, but most of them I knew weren't. There was, my community, you had about a dozen Baptist churches, a Methodist church, and a Presbyterian church. And I don't remember ever hearing anything about snakes at the Presbyterian church. I know a lot of Scots were Presbyterian. And I don't know how maybe that was a rebellion against the Anglican Church of England. I'm not sure. McGuy. Okay. Brenda hasn't gotten quite that far yet. Okay, what's on your bucket list? I've missed something else. Carkey says they're McNichol, originally spelled that way. Okay, but Grandpa changed it because Americans kept pronouncing it wrong. Well, and I'm probably saying it wrong too then. Yes, Americans, that happened a lot. I may have told this story before, but I have from friends that I used to ride motorcycles with a few years back, and his last name was Ernie, Erny. And the story in his family, and I don't know if this is true, and I don't know if he said he knew it for a fact, but his sister told the story about when his grandparents immigrated from wherever they came from, and I believe she said they were Eastern European, maybe, that they came over here and they couldn't pronounce their last name, which was common, or the immigration agents couldn't, so they often changed them. Sometimes they just wrote them down the way they wanted to, and names got changed a lot that way during immigration. So they couldn't, whatever their name was, they either didn't want it to be their name. Some people changed it because they didn't want to be associated with a name or a place. And sometimes they did it because they couldn't, people couldn't pronounce it. But the story is they looked out the window and saw something that said East River, New York, Erny. So they changed their name to Ernie right on that. That's what they wrote down on their paperwork, and which is a really cool story if it's true. I mean, I hate that they had to change their name, but it's kind of interesting that happened, and I suspect things like that happened a lot. people took names and came up with names, or names were made up for them. And you got to remember that a lot of our ancestors came over here not being able to speak a word of English, and that kind of stuff got pretty twisted up in the process. At your daughter's wedding, we kept joking about that my 84-year-old mother was going to battle the groom's relatives they were visiting from. That's possible, Carol. And which is another thing that puts me at a bit at odds, because I've got Scottish relatives and Irish relatives, and the Scot. A lot of the term Scots Irish kind of comes from the Scots Presbyterians that moved into the Ulster area, or Northern Ireland, which remains under British rule to this day, and that's largely because of the Protestant population, and a lot of that came over from Scotland, actually. So there is some truth to that parts of Scots and Irish that didn't get along, and so I've got a little bit of both, and I think
they did two big waves of that immigration. The Bruce sent them over to that Ulster Scot country, and
Was that before or after the Brits were involved, though? He did
that was before. He wanted
that's
it.
what I thought.
His people had come from there, and he wanted it back.
Yeah.
And so he sent Scottish soldiers to Northern Ireland to take it back, and they ended up staying. And then the Brits sent Scots again.
Yeah.
What did they call that? The plantation era, I think. In the 1600s or something, they sent them over there again.
And the Irish have been protesting and fighting for it back ever since, pretty much.
And they're the same people. I mean,
Well, in that regard, yeah.
My buddy always jokes that Scots are, you take a feral Irishman and send him east. and you add a Viking or two in there and stir up the pot, and there you got a Highlander then.
There's a lot of truth in that too. The Celts, and that's and we don't talk about that, but that is one of the reasons why we do talk about the Irish and being Irish and so many people in this country with connections to Ireland and in that area is because they traveled. I mean, they were a lot like Vikings in a way. They got out and sailed the world too. They think they did a lot of exploring that they didn't get a lot of credit for early on, and they still don't probably, but they're pretty sure that kind of stuff happened. So they were peoples that got out and conquered or were conquered, whichever the case may be.
Well, our country, our part of the world where we grew up, that you had two major groups of humans that came and settled all that back when it was still wilderness. And those were those Ulster Scots, the Scots Irish, as they call them, and Germans.
Yeah.
And that's who.
I got both of those in my family.
Who settled Appalachia.
Yeah. The Germans came in and they settled a lot in Pennsylvania and New York area, and the Dutch did too, but the Germans also got down this way along with the Scotch Irish, and that's a lot of our traditions come from them. And in fact, that's basically the heart of bluegrass and that kind of music is a carryover from Irish and Scottish music from days of yore, and probably why it's in our blood. The Amish are German. That's correct. Yeah. I was trying to think if the Amish are also something else, but I think they do mostly claim to be Germans or of German descent, I guess would be the way to say it. Which is all.
I'm a Zorns on one side, German, Austrian, McLeish, McPherson on the other side. It's so, it's just like, and then a lot of other interesting folks
A
coming
real,
by.
a real American stew there.
Yeah.
And Mark's run some of his history back and found some really interesting things, Native American lineage and and the Scots and like he just said, German and my mother's father, my grandfather's name was Sensible, and that's spelled about 20 some different ways. They've traced it back to where it first came into the country. It's pretty Germanic. That's pretty much from that part of the world. And Brenda, I think it's Brenda, or maybe it is my family. We trace back to that area in France that the Germans and the French fought over for so long along the Ruhr, the Rhine, that
Alsace-Lorraine.
Yeah, it was always in contention, and they always were fighting back and forth, and so there's some of that in there too. And Tina's got something here. Let's see.
Oh, well, Lutheran, they take the power from the papal. That's why my people left Germany.
Yeah, my grandmother Lutheran. Is Bonnet now explain something, Tina? Was Bonnet-Kemper a name or was that a group within the Lutheran Church? I'm not familiar with that term. I probably should be, but I apologize for not being.
The last name, I think.
That's what I'm thinking.
Bonnet-Kemper.
The bing. I chased that thought right out of that. When she's put that, when I read that the first time, it made me think of something. But there was actually, Tina, I had kin in Pennsylvania too back in colonial times. In fact, one of my ancestors was a light, and it was actually spelled Litcht or something originally. And I think it got Englishtized or whatever and turned into Light. But he moved into part of Pennsylvania and built a fort. It was called a fort. It was a stopover trading post / inn / roadhouse probably. And but it was built of stone, which what made it kind of unique. And it had tunnels underneath it. Had a large basement or safe room kind of underneath it, and it's still there today. In fact, it's in Lebanon, Pennsylvania, and it's a historic landmark. And it was used during the early frontier days as a safe house for people that if they were escaping Indian raids or whatever, they would come there, and that's where people would gather up during trouble times. And it's pretty interesting. I've read up on it some. I want to get up there one day and see it. They had this room underneath, which has been turned into everything from a wine cellar to a beer hall at one point. Somebody tried to turn it in, I think, to a restaurant. But it's got 2 attached tunnels that ran up to a mile, I think, out east and west. So if you were a settler and you lived outside the community and you got warned that you needed to get into the stockade or go to a safe ground, they could actually work their way to the end of that cave system or tunnel and come in from there. And it was like a mile. One of them was a mile. I think they said it was a mile long. So that was a pretty good distance to, work that kind of thing. I've always heard that a lot of colonial forts and houses had tunnels to escape out of, or to hide in, or whatever if they needed to. And this was one that really had that, and it actually had 2. And there's still the arches for it are still there. I believe they're closed off now. Last time I looked, but the whole thing was made out of limestone, and it was mason built, if you will. So it was very safe from just about everything that was in the colonial or the pioneer wilderness area of America as it was settled. There were few or no cannon, and it would hold up against fire and arrows and bullets and that sort of thing. So I'm sure it was a pretty secure place to be. Pretty neat place. I'd like to get up and see it. and I can't remember exactly what years when he built it. It says on their website. And I got a message from somebody. Let me see if it's important. Nope. Anywho, that's that's at least part of my history. It's definitely fun to check. I mean, if you're like me, and this is why it drives Brenda crazy, I haven't spent more time doing it, but I love history, so you'd think I'd be, and I do eat it up. I just don't always do it as systematically as she's been doing it. But when I start tracing things like that back, it fascinates me because it links me. Some of it makes a lot more sense once I do find that. Yeah, I bet, Tina. That's another thing I've missed. I mean, so much of my family's now gone that I would love to have asked some of those questions when I was young. I mean, I wish I had even known to ask some of those questions. I feel sure that when I was a wee tyke, there was at least somebody that probably remembered or knew the great grandfather that came over from Ireland. I mean, I knew my great grandmother on my grandmother's side of the family was still alive when I was born, and I remember when she passed away, but I was 5 or 6 years old at the most, and I just don't. You're not old enough to ask those kind of questions. And now I wish I could have. I wish I knew more about it. I would just like to have known how that went. And I was just thinking earlier today, how would I find that? And maybe I can go over there and look at a Bible. I mean, family Bibles sometimes contain all kinds of information. Plus, I just saw a couple of books on Amazon that help you do that, help you figure out some of the records and things from Ireland and Scotland and Wales to follow back genealogy tracks and names and links. So I don't know. I may end up doing more of that too. Did Corky say something? Yes, she did. That's interesting. That's amazing and sad, Carol, that he can't do that. Have you ever asked him if he can write it down, or is that too difficult too? And that I'm not trying to be cruel or mean. I wonder sometimes that happens. Just as I started to really be interested in the history of my family, or just the members of my family, because I've got some characters anyway. I guess we all do. But that's when they all sort of started passing away on me. I didn't get started in time. When we were kids, our parents didn't have TV. Yeah, they used to tell the stories. You're absolutely correct. That's how the Native Americans did it and still do to some degree. They're still passing a lot of stuff down verbally. And I think most of the people in this country lost that tradition. And you can probably say TV, radio, all kinds of things, the car. I mean, there's all kinds of things that change that tradition, those traditions. And you're right. We climb into the TV and we don't listen enough. That's very true. I had some uncles that were characters, Tina. I guess a lot of my ancestors or family were, but I had a couple of uncles that could spin yarns better than me. I think that's where I got my gift of gab, but they used to tell some big ones. As we used to say, some whoppers. And when I was a kid, I didn't know. I thought they were all true. I'm sure I've told some of those on here before, but what I wish I had done was sit down and wrote them down, because there's some I don't remember that well, and some it's funny because I can think back and I can remember me standing in the yard in my uncle's house and him sitting on the porch or out under the maple tree, telling a big tale about being playing for the New York Yankees or playing football or being in the Army, or and
I remember
knocking the end out of the stadium at
knocking the
UT.
end out of the stadium. And I remember those things so vividly. And I mean, I can still go back and stand there, in that yard with all the family kind of around and him telling those tales. And I guess mostly he was telling to me and maybe his son. We were the same age, but his older kids probably knew. They probably already knew better. And me, I probably stood there gap mouth thinking, "Oh my God, you're a hero," and wondering why their name wasn't on the stadium down there. That kind. I think they told me that's because they just were too modest. They didn't want that kind of publicity. I'm sure they had a reason. He pitched for the Yankees and fought in the war, which I don't think I'm not sure he did. He might have, but I don't think he did. Another uncle did, but which is another thing I wish I'd talked to him more about too. And that's not something he talked about, but when he got older, I think he was more willing to pass that along. What was this? Place is now a bar. You talking about Light Sport, babe? I think that's what it's still called. Hey, Boudreaux. Hey, buddy. How's life in the low world? Man, he sounds solid.
He's solid.
You reckon he weighs about 20 pounds now?
I bet he's pushing 25.
Hey, Boudreaux.
He had to get a new collar. His last one. Listen. He's got him a fancy new glow in the dark collar. So
Ooh, look at that.
Yeah.
All the other dogs jealous.
Oh yeah. All right, get down, bud.
Let's see, Tina's got another place. Nothing.
What do you got?
That's very true. That's very true, Tina. Did they cast him out? I mean, were the Mennonite, did he have to leave the Mennonite church after that? I started to ask you that a minute ago.
Married a Lutheran gal. They probably cast him from the fold.
I wouldn't doubt it, not one bit. But you're right. They're only a step or so away from the Amish. The Amish don't. One of the differences I always heard is that's because they're willing to use, mechanized machinery and that kind of stuff to farm with, and they drive cars, and some of them have TVs. But beyond that, that's about as close as they get. Is that clicking sound coming from your house?
That's me. I'm messing with something sitting here on my table.
That's okay. I'm just trying to figure out if it's something popping in here because it's very clear. You can keep doing it. I don't want you to stop.
No, I'm not. No.
You're not going to do it now, are you?
I'm not going to do it now.
Well, I'll do it.
Sorry, I was.
No, I would thought something was doing it on my computer.
Idle hands is a devil's playground, man.
You need to get that fiddle down and play it.
Yeah, I wish.
That's what Cottrell always told me. He said fiddle was the devil's tool or something like that.
I guess I could be braiding rawhide or something.
Well, you could be.
I've been cutting string, lots of rawhide. I got miles of rawhide I've cut.
Tina says that they didn't kick him out. He would bring his grandmother to her services and go to his. He strayed for a while, but they managed to work it out. That's interesting. Oh wow, is that all rawhide that you just cut? I missed it on one screen and caught it on the other one there, huh?
I was wondering how you saw it because I put it down by now.
Well, you did, but I saw it over here. there's a lag, and I was reading her thing.
Yeah, there's probably several hundred yards of rawhide laid.
Well, maybe not quite that much. He was cutting on that yesterday when I talked to him, I think, or Thursday sometime. Carol, did you get to see Teddy a while ago? He's awake. I thought I'd see if he wanted to, you want to get on the interwebs and say hi to Carol? You want to say hi to Carol? I hear Boudreaux.
He's a mess.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Goodness.
He's got a hold of that old dog of ours that doesn't like to play with anybody, but somehow manages to play with him.
Must be the puppy. I mean, it must just be.
She's been mean to every dog we've ever owned, but puppy when they're pup, and she doesn't get mad at him. I don't get it.
Say hi, Carol. I'm being shy today. I don't want to be.
He's averting his eyes.
He is averting his eyes. Why are you doing that? You're just refusing to look up, aren't you? You're on there whether you like it or not. If you look up, you'll see yourself. I mean, don't know if he's coming or going when he sees himself. He pushes off. I believe it's about a ton per square paw there. That must have been tough doing, though, Tina. I can't imagine. Hey, John, say Dad. Tell Dad we said hi. Hope he's doing okay in St. Augustine. See you later, buddy. And I see. There it is right there. Okay. Yeah, that can be pretty scandalous too, Carol. I've heard of those kind of stories. I used to work with a guy that converted to Catholicism sometime after he got married. So that, let me see how this worked. He married a Catholic gal. I don't know if he was anything or not. And they either had some kids or maybe she had kids. Not sure about that. But in order to get them baptized in the Catholic Church, he had to convert. Carol, or if somebody knows can tell me if that seems logical or not, because I don't know. I noticed a while ago if I blocked out some of that yellow, I didn't look quite as white. I didn't look quite as yellow. And I'm glad they got it worked out. Those kind of issues though are real in families, and that's why you look back on, if you run your ancestry and do that kind of stuff, sometimes it's amazing what you find, because you realize that somewhere back in there is a scandal, or there's a marriage between two families or groups from different parts of the world or the country, and they didn't get along, and who knows, maybe they didn't get along then or after that, or sometimes that's what caused the rift. Eerie found that my dad's Catholic mom was actually Jewish until she was 30. She pretended to be Catholic so she could come to really. Now that is a story, Carol. At what point in time? Well, I know there's always been a certain amount of bias or I would say prejudice. That's not the word I'm looking for, against the Jewish people. But at what time in history was that? Do you know? Wow, they kept that a secret. My goodness. It's really a shame we have to keep things like that a secret. A good friend of mine, his wife is Jewish, and her parents moved to this part of the country, her ancestors, quite a couple of generations back, and I asked him about that. how that went, if he knew anything about their history. And I guess at first it was kind of rough on them, but eventually they were accepted by the community and, had a store and did all that kind of stuff. Okay, somebody was a conscientious objector. Let me see here. Okay, Tina, I got to back up here and catch up on this story here. Wow, so Carol, your family doesn't go back too far. Some of them, at least, are first generation here. That's interesting. 25. That was before the big push came, but they may have. I know there were already. There's always been a lot of discrimination against Jews in Europe. I know a man who married a Jewish woman, but they kept it secret. That was maybe 80, 85 years ago. They didn't keep it a secret from the family, though. Your grandfather, the Mennonite. Oh, okay. Okay.
He was a conscientious objector.
I think her grandfather.
Yeah, which was common in that day.
Yeah, especially for a Mennonite or an Amish.
Yep.
And that's fascinating. And it's amazing that how some families worked through that and some didn't. And some maybe became stronger for it, and some families, I guess, were destroyed because of it. But not just that, but other similar reasons. And that was interesting. I mean, it's kind of like that. Well, if you know the story of Alvin York, he was a conscientious objector too, and to a point, and he changed over, I guess, if you will say, at least in that respect. But and then you take somebody like the guy that was in the movie
Hacksaw Ridge.
Hacksaw Ridge. I mean, that guy turned out to be a hell of a hero, and he was a conscientious objector.
He was the first conscientious objector to get the Medal of Honor.
Yeah, he sure
was.
Which
is pretty. I mean, he believed in what he believed, but it didn't keep him from going to war.
No, and he saved a lot of lives for the effort. He took care of those. That's fascinating. Yeah, he did. I mean, that's the thing. There were ways, and there are ways that conscientious objectors can still do their part or do a part, and that's certainly one. I mean, we forget about things like that sometimes when people go to war, or when there's a major war such as the second one was, or the first one for that matter, and well, for any, but in that case, people who went to war or women who joined the workforce, there had to be people to replace them too, and we forget about them a lot. And that, women in many ways pulled this country through the Second World War. In some ways, pulled them out of the Depression and through the Second World War. I mean, there were a lot of women on assembly lines in this country doing jobs that women had never done before, and made a heck of a difference in the long run.
And my grandmother she went to work at my cousin always called it the sweatshop, but she went to work at a uniform or men's pants factory, and she ran a sewing machine the rest of her life there, like big heavy duty industrial sewing machine.
But she
So-
got started working during the war, making uniforms during the war.
making uniforms during the war, and she'd come home with big old holes through her thumbnail or whatever from those big heavy duty sewing machines, and she was just tough old German gal. And she worked there for 40 years sewing on pockets. That's what she did, sewed on pockets.
Sewed on pockets. How about
Mhm.
that? I've met a couple of people that I just read a story or an article about some women who built airplanes who left home, if you will, and went into the factories to build airplanes during the war. And the old Rosie the Riveter thing, they built everything from tanks to battleships to cars. In fact, I knew another, the guy actually I was talking about earlier that had married the Catholic lady and then later converted so his kids could be baptized, if you will. He worked in the shipyards in Virginia up at Norfolk, and worked on things like subs and aircraft carriers. Now, not during the war, but after that, or in more of our time. But his wife was also a shipbuilder, and that was kind of a handed down thing too. Women had gone into that and learned how to weld and do heavy work in those kind of fields. But I think that kind of stuff tends to be ranked higher when you talk about women who served in that respect or men. When at the same time, somebody that made uniforms, what might not have been as grueling a work as welding a ship, is just as important. Or somebody who helped worked in a hospital and did that kind of work, because that allowed others to go on and be able to do other things that they were able or willing to do.
She was a tough gal. Very tough.
Yeah, Tina, and it was a
She
different
chased me
mindset.
around with a switch if I got crosswise. Or make me go cut my own.
I had to cut my own a lot. I did have to do that. My grandparents didn't use them on me so much. My mom sure did.
And I deserved every one of them. So
Yeah, probably. Even though at the time I wouldn't have admitted
it. She was a tough gal.
Half the penalty was having to cut your own switch.
And her name, her family name was Von Dressler.
Oh my!
And her daddy was, they hadn't been over here too long, couple generations, and they were right, straight from Germany. And she still made lots of German food. Spätzle noodles are still my favorite food ever to eat. And but during World War I, they had changed their family name. Some of them, she had, trying to think how many brothers and sisters. I think there was 8 of them, and half of them took the last name of Dress, Dress, and half of them took the name of Trace, Trace. And she was a Trace, and they changed their name because it wasn't cool to be German in the early, in 1917 or whatever.
No, Germans caught more hell in this country. German Americans caught more flack in World War I than they did in World War II, and they caught some then too. Not quite like the Japanese Americans, but
no, nothing like the Jap.
But in World War I, it was a little bit different. They were treated differently, and which is kind of interesting in many ways because we weren't as involved in that war till near the end. Well, we were actually involved, but not, directly. And that's a squirrel we could chase for days too. That I've learned so much in the last couple of years just about those conflicts and how they affected countries all over the world. And it's
I didn't learn a lot of that in high school, and even well, maybe some of it in college. I don't think I got to that part in college, but hit that part of history. But they didn't teach us a lot about some of that stuff, and there's a lot there. Yeah, that's right. That's very true, Tina. My mom was kind of
Because if you had to go get another one, it was going to be worse.
Well, I've had to go get another one before.
Yeah, me too.
It didn't work. It didn't work if you brought one up there. It's just kind of like a noodle. That you were going to pay for that.
Which is why, I mean, when I was a boy, when you were a boy, we all had pocket knives. There's a squirrel.
Oh, had what?
We all had pocket knives so we could go
yeah.
to our own switch.
Yeah.
And we had them from the time we were about 4 years old. So
yeah, so we were expected to be able to cut our own.
yeah.
Oh, I've had to go get many a switch, and that's funny because my mom used to just swear up and down that she never did that, but I can tell you, my legs will tell you otherwise. When my girls,
I didn't even see that, Carol. I didn't even see that you used gut. I thought you said gutsy.
Me too. I didn't think about it being history. When my girls were little, my mom would keep them, and of course, she never whacked them on the bottom.
No, they don't. Grandkids don't get that. Grandkids don't get it.
And I would, remind her that that's not how she raised me, and she would just look at me. And the girl, she said, "Dad, don't believe him. That is not true. I never laid a hand on that child."
My two sets of grandparents, the only one that ever made me go get a switch was my mom's dad, and me and the cousins were chasing all his chickens down and pulling tail feathers out so we could make Indian war bonnets. And that was not okay.
That was not allowed.
And we learned that day that you don't do that with chickens.
Well, let me ask you this. Did one of you pick out the switch for everybody, or did each one have to go get their own?
No, we all went to get our own. That was an early lesson in chicken farming. You don't chase them down and pull their tail feathers.
No. Now, I'll tell you something else you don't do. You don't go lie and get matches from the neighbor lady either. My cousin and I did that. We got in a lot of trouble for that one. Thank goodness we never. Oh, a cat of nine tails.
Holy buckets.
Hopefully it didn't have.
Hopefully he never used it on you.
Exactly.
Oh my God. That's like an actual weapon of torture there.
No kidding. I got a big spank. I got a big
whooping
cannon for this one. But it's really my uncle's fault. They're the one that told us. They're the ones that told us this. They told I probably told this before. Mark might know what I'm talking about. There's a thistle that grows along the ground in this part of the country. It's got little berries on it. And they just grow right on the ground. And the berries look kind of like a striped watermelon, but they're round. They're just about yay big. Cherry size or smaller. And they're on a little stem, you pick
sandbriars, we called those.
Probably what they are. We called them what do we call them? Horseberries or something. I don't know. But we were told as youngins that those you could light the stem like a fuse on a cherry bomb or something, and they would blow up like fireworks. So we decided we wanted to do that. And we didn't have any matches. And so he and I wandered over to Aunt Maud's, who was actually she was, I guess, my mom's aunt. And we asked her, and there was another relative that lived there too, and I can't think of her name, but we asked for matches, and of course they wanted to know what for, and
our reason turned out to be because his mom, my Aunt Stella, wanted to smoke. Well, she didn't smoke. And everybody seemed to know that but us. I mean, for some reason that seemed perfectly logical to us, but it wasn't. So, of course, she ratted us out after she thought about it for a minute. And when we come home that night, we tried just for information, so nobody else makes this mistake. They will not light, much less explode like a cherry bomb. We couldn't get any of them to light. But we got the punishment was about we could have burned the whole woods down, which is probably true. But we didn't. We didn't burn nothing down, but we did get in trouble for lying and getting matches. And the reason was, Aunt Stella doesn't smoke, so they figured it out right away. We should have said burn the garbage or something, because back then everybody burned their trash. And we might have got away with that. But we got licked for that one, buddy. I'm gonna tell you. I think I could heard him screaming or yelling all the way from Kingsport. I still remember that one, so I hadn't forgot about it. That's called, Carol says that's called hands-on learning. Yeah, it's so true. That's probably the way I learned best too, Carol, for good or for bad.
Yeah.
Oh, it's Mark chases chickens, Tim chases squirrels. That's absolutely right. But I know for a fact that Mark has also chased squirrels. I remember one time he tried. I never did it again. Can't for the life of me remember what it was. Yeah, well, that's true, and oh, those were the days, weren't they?
I don't remember being scarred by it. That we've talked about this. I got not regular, but semi-regular switchings as a child for doing something I wasn't supposed to do,
and you still grew up okay.
I don't think I'm scarred physically or mentally by it. But
no, somewhere along, I don't want to. I know that's a man. That's a big old squirrel there, but
that's a big old squirrel.
Yeah, we got spanked or whipped or swatted, switched, whatever, for doing something we weren't supposed to be doing, and we knew that. I mean, whether we wanted to admit it or not, and we sure didn't want the when we say beaten, but we really weren't getting a beat, and that's the thing. We weren't getting beat. We were just getting whipped for doing something wrong, and most likely something we'd been told not to do several times before, and because it usually took a couple of times to get through my head until the switch came out, and then I remembered real quick.
But it was like at school, I got it at least once a month at school.
Well, see, I can't say that. I never got paddled at school.
And the shop teacher always had something to do with that one. So,
well, they usually made the paddles.
Yeah, they did.
Which was probably really was illegal back then.
Right.
There was a lot of paddles.
Principal Herman Banger whooped me more times than I could shake a stick. And I deserved every one of them.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
I had teachers that had leather paddles. I mean, we're talking leather about yay thick and about yay wide. And I don't know whether this had anything to do with anything. And a lot of that was mental. They knew nobody wanted that paddle on their behind. So, a lot of that had to do with that. It was just a mental thing. You didn't want that paddle.
Yeah, it was.
Some of them even had holes in them so they wouldn't get slowed down by the air, they said.
It was crime prevention. That's what it was.
What? Crime prevention?
Crime for prevention.
Yeah. Well, that's that ounce of prevention for that pound of cure you were about to get.
Yep, they always hung on a strap up on the wall where you could
see. Yeah, where they could be seen. That's right. Or in the special drawer.
Yeah.
I had one teacher that had his in a special drawer.
Big old, great big wooden desk.
Yeah. And the corner might be loose and they could pound on it, make a loud noise till some smart kid put paper under it and broke his fingers. Carol says her shop teacher, middle school would swat kids who took off their safety glasses.
That could not have been legal in well, yeah, it was legal in 1980.
Of course it was.
I can tell you from personal experience that it was at least legal to 1983. When I was a senior.
Oh me. Yeah. I had a sixth grade teacher, a woman, sixth grade teacher who had a short boat paddle that looked just like a standard canoe paddle, but was only about that long. And she could swing it. Now she only did it a couple of times, but it didn't take but once to figure that one out. I mean, again, you didn't want to tempt that one more than once. But then again, I knew some kids that seemed like they just lived for it because there was something going on because they got it a lot. Not that paddle, but others. Eighth grade, there was one kid in eighth grade that by the end of the year he was getting a regular paddling in homeroom just because. I mean, literally, he'd come in the room and the teacher just say, "Stand right there, Lenny." He hadn't even had time to do anything yet.
You're going to need this before the day's out.
Yeah, just go ahead and get you warmed up here.
We're going to go ahead and get this out of the way.
Oh, my. And, of course, he'd kind of grin and get it over with, and it was kind of done for.
The old Herbert Bangert would line us up in the hallway, but right outside of his office door. There'd be 12 or 15 of us boys, and
welcome, Phantasmic Chronicles.
You had to reach over and grab your ankles, and then he'd whack you.
Yeah. Are you a shop teacher, Tony? And that's Tony, Phantasmic Chronicles. He's welcome to our show. We're actually talking about ancestry and our, where we came from, but we've diverted off into
chicken.
We're chasing a chicken. Yeah, today we're chasing a chicken. Oh, I bet, Tina. He probably knows about nut. I've always didn't know this till later in life, but I always heard that rulers across the knuckles was a real thing in Catholic schools. Was that true? And ask him if you're not sure, ask him. I bet he knows. Did you ever get a ruler across the knuckles?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh no, we didn't. I know guys that went to Catholic schools that did, but I didn't.
That's not funny, but it is. What Tony said about shop teachers in school. Oh, that's really, I'm sorry. I don't mean to laugh into this. That's not disrespectful. That's just kind of been there, done that.
We had a guy that trained people in using chainsaws that people had never, that had never used a chainsaw. And he was missing his left arm up to the elbow.
Oh, my.
And that was from Vietnam, not from a chainsaw. But when he would come in and start to teach people, they paid it. He's like, you'll end up like this if you don't pay attention.
How did he run a chainsaw with one hand?
Beautifully.
Did he?
He'd put his elbow down on that chainsaw. I mean, he was just a master with it, but he was tough too.
I bet he was. Yeah, we did that too. We did classes like that where we had to be chainsaws. I'd run a chainsaw. I learned how many things I'd been doing wrong for all them years and thinking, geez, how did I not cut myself to pieces? Carol went to Catholic school. first through sixth grade.
The
The
nuns
nuns were
pulled hair.
mostly okay. Oh, one pulled kid's hair. Now that's a new one. I haven't heard that one. And Tina's husband says, well, what happened to it?
Try teaching 3 small sons safety. Oh, yeah.
Oh, I can imagine, Tony. That's but that's good though. I mean, that's good. I've tried to teach mine stuff like that too. I did have a lot of hand, I had a saw and that kind of stuff in my shop. The girls mostly stayed out of that. If I'd had sons, I'm sure that would have been even more of a handful,
But they taught us how to run table saws and drill presses and lathes and things when we were 10, 12 years old.
well, it's
Back in the day.
Well, it depends on your father. I mean, I didn't have stuff like that at home. You did.
Yeah.
And mine, I got to learn other things, but my grandfathers had different equipment and stuff. But it's what we were taught and learned what to use, what was there. I mean, what we had on hand. It wasn't like they necessarily went out of their way to teach us something about a saw. But if there was a saw there, then you had to know about it before you just picked it up and started using it. That was another reason you'd be out fetching a switch.
Yeah.
Tina's husband said he got the ruler across the knuckle 2 or 3 times and he was left-handed. I heard they were especially hard on left-handers. I've often heard that some teachers, Carol, I'm guessing you're not this kind of teacher, but I heard that teachers used to do that. They would beat kids on the hands and stuff to make them try to be right-handed. And I'll see if she responds to that, or he does. Oh, Carol, that makes you even younger than Marcus here. I'm not trying to really calculate your age. I'm just trying to put a mental picture together here.
I got gray in my beard.
I know you do.
Mostly.
I see it.
Mostly.
And mine has pretty much turned white. I thought about going with some greasing formula. What do you think?
Nah. Embrace the claws, man.
I pretty much have. It's my head's still not as brown as it used to be, but still pretty brown. But boy, my face isn't. It left me some time ago. Just a little bit here. My dad had a neat beard in 1976. No, well, it might have been 76. 2 things happened somewhere right in that same period. Johnson City celebrated their centennial, which seems odd that I guess it was just not as old as Jonesboro and stuff. But anyway, and a lot of the men around town grew beards. It was kind of a contest thing they did to, celebrate their birthday. But it was also near 76, and a lot of men did then too for the bicentennial, U.S. bicentennial. And my dad's beard was black on the sides, but gray right through here. And he was, in his 40s, I guess, at that time in his life. But it was, he looked like a skunk, literally like a skunk. It was just white. And somewhere I've got a picture of him with a beard. I need to find one. And that's probably why I told him he should keep it, but he never did. He shaved it off. I don't think he ever had a beard again. He kept his mustache, but her husband's a lefty. Let's see here. This is Tony's, my wife taught me into shaving my beard down to a goatee last night. Oh no, I feel a little naked right now. Happy wife, happy life. Yeah, I've gone by that motto too. I don't know if that holds up all the time. I watched a guy. I
I get some beard products from a guy, a group, and he shaved his the other day. He said it was the first time in 8 or 9 or 10 years he'd been shaved, and he shaved because he wanted to start from scratch and talk to people that were new growing beards and show them, kind of how to keep it trimmed and do things and let it grow back out. But I've had mine short. I've cut it short in here. A lot of you guys have seen my beard cut pretty short, but I haven't had a beard on my face since my daughter was born. I don't think either one of my kids have ever seen my face without a beard on it. Jennifer, maybe, but I don't think so, because somewhere in there is when I just quit shaving. I know when Jennifer was born is when I got my earring, so I know how long I've had it. But I think that's about when I started growing a beard too. And I can't imagine, when I first started even trimming mine short, I felt kind of naked, so I can't imagine taking it all off.
Well, everybody I know that shaves their beard, if they've had one for years, they don't like what they see. And they
yeah, that's one of the reasons I don't want to take mine off.
And they wish that it would just instantly grow back.
I'll be honest, I've always been jealous of those guys that could take it off and a month later it looked like they'd been growing it for 20 years. Carol said her husband's left and disappointed that none of their kids are. That happens. I'm not sure what the wires that cross up are that make righty or lefty, but that does happen. I can do some things both-handed, but I can't write. I've never been able to write. I mean, I've tried to write with my left hand, and it's just so awkward. Which is another interesting thing about being a lefty is it's writing is a difficult thing as we're taught to write. I knew somebody that wrote left-handed and she would bend her arm up like this to write. I mean, it would look like the most painful thing, and she was doing it. I mean, like this is the paper. I don't know if you can see that or not. And she would bend her hand up like this to write. And I never thought about this growing up, but it was to keep her hand out of the ink as she wrote, because it would smear the paper. And he's had his since the mid-70s. Well, Tina, good, congratulations, and good for him. I like that. Tony says they're watching back his stream from Cedar Point. And I had a goatee. Oh, so that's why she wanted you to cut it. Or that was part of the effort. That's a good long time to have a beard, Tina. But it's backwards. It is backwards. It feels backwards. Oh, that's how he writes. Well, see, and I didn't understand that at first. And it's hard and it looks difficult. And like I said, it looks painful. But when she kind of explained it to me, I figured out why she does that. And so many left-handers do write. They don't just lay their hand down on the paper because they're going the wrong direction. And I never thought about that was why. And it makes sense now. But, it seems like there ought to be a way but there's no way you can do that and your hand not be going across the text. I mean, it just doesn't, unless they write from the, right to left on the paper. I've got cat hair all over my shirt. I guess you can't see it. It's probably a good thing. Or I picked you up a while ago. He came back and sat down and he reached out. He reaches out and grabs me, but he really doesn't want to, get that involved. It would smear if he didn't put his hand up over. That's what she told me. And I just never had thought about that before. And then I actually looked at it and looked at and I thought, wow, she's right. And I was probably in my 40s when I figured that
about. Somebody I worked with at TVA, and man, it was just different. They ever put that two and two together, and you say one and well, I don't know if you said that or not. Isn't it like 1 in 10? Aren't lefties like 1 in 10 or something? They think in the population, and that's probably about how many I've known in my life. There's a fashion accessory. That is so true, Tina. I'm glad you understand. It certainly is around this house. And I think
makes a good seat cover in your truck too.
Yeah.
My boss used to tell us that he said we'd get a lot more trade-in value on our game and fish trucks if they didn't all come with that custom handmade woven dog hair seat cover.
I take it a lot of you carried the dog around.
Yeah, most of us. So you had to have company.
Well, that's true. You covered a lot of. I rode around in my truck a lot too, and you guys covered a lot more ground than I did. So I can understand. And a lot less populated than mine too. So I can understand that.
Had to have somebody to talk to, you'd go crazy.
Yeah. I spent a lot of days where I'd kind of cover my territory for various reasons, and that was about a 200 something mile day if I did that. And for you guys, that's nothing.
I had 5 counties.
Well, I did too, but mine were not as big and closer together.
Well, like Sweetwater County, it's bigger than Belgium, literally, in area, larger than the country of Belgium.
How much of the state did you actually cover? The whole southwestern corner or more?
Yeah, all the way from Carbon County and central Wyoming to Lincoln County and up on the Idaho border. So, which is a county I live in, but it's a big piece of country.
Yeah. Tina says Gaston has antlers in all his home decorating and you know who Gaston is, I'm assuming. And she uses dog hair.
No,
I'm sure I'm glad there's people here to understand, pets. Some people just don't get it. I guess you learn to tolerate it, or you accept it as a fact of life if you're going to have pets, and it doesn't matter. Any furry pets I've ever seen is going to leave trace. But I guess there's some dogs that don't shed much at all. But
my middle daughter and her husband, they have one of those mutt dogs I think we talked about before, and
yeah,
she doesn't shed very much or at all. But
she's a part doodle, though, right?
Yeah, she's a labradoodle.
Yeah, that's what makes.
But all my dogs all they leave hair all over the place.
they're natural born shedders.
Mm-hmm.
It does seem natural. I guess poodles and there's a few other dogs I guess are not shedder. I'm not sure there's a cat that's not a shedder unless it's a naked cat.
Yeah, and those are just gross looking.
I know somebody has 2 of those cats, and I've asked her it's just they don't seem right to me. Plus, I think they'd freeze to death. What do you think, Edward?
Yeah, they never would have made it in the wild.
No, I guess not unless they lived in
the
Egypt.
Sahara.
Isn't that where they came from, the Sahara?
Probably. Or
even then, you'd think they would. I wonder if they sweat. Now, I'm asking that as a legitimate.
Don't know.
Some animals pant so they don't sweat like a dog pants.
Right.
How do you get cold? How do you cool off, Edward? I guess they pant a little bit too, but they don't sweat. Designer dogs, pshaw. They're really just. That's true, Tina. When we were growing up, that would have been a mutt. You're absolutely correct. And cats,
hairless dogs.
Oh, yeah, hairless dogs.
I'm not crazy about either one of them, but hairless dogs to me are even worse than hairless cats.
So there's a breed that's out of Mexico that's a hairless
Yeah.
dog. That literally is and I've looked at a lot of critters, and that literally is the ugliest animal that I've ever seen.
They look like they've been skint and they're running around in their skin. I mean,
And they're all wrinkly and scabby and gross. They're gross looking. They're just.
Although I do think that, what is it, a Chinese crested, I believe? I think they're naked too, except for spots of hair on their head and different
Well,
places.
they don't look right either.
No, I think they're worse in a way. Okay, we've run that rabbit literally down the hole. We've dogged that right into all we need to do is call in the beagles now.
We circled that one right around back to the squirrel.
Right back around to the squirrel. I got a feist dog to chase squirrels. There's a few people around here that do raise squirrel dogs and sell them. Which I've never hunted squirrels with a dog. I think that'd be interesting. My son wanted to get a hairless. They make hairless guinea pigs.
But you talked him into a regular one. That's a good job.
Is that like a hairless mole rat like they have at Disney World, Carol? I wonder. I think they're out of Africa too, I believe. Unless they're or South America, I'm not sure. You know,
I think they're from Northern Africa. I think
they probably are.
I think they're a burrowing critter from North Africa, as I recall.
But you know, guinea pigs in South America, guinea pigs are considered a delicacy.
Yeah, they're
eating pretty regular down there.
They raise them at home.
Yeah,
and they're kind of pets till they get eaten.
Kind of like rabbits in some places.
Mm-hmm. The coney.
A coney?
Yeah, that's what people used to call some rabbits that they raised for food.
A coney, okay.
I always wondered if that's where Coney Island got its name.
Skinny pigs. I'd have to look that one up. I didn't know about skinny pigs. See, you learn something every day on here. Every Saturday you learn something here. It's amazing. You guys will know more about my squirrels and bird issues than you ever wanted to know.
Squirrel issues it just like gives you knowledge that it's deep.
It's deep. You might not have wanted it, and you might be drowning, but you get it. So, anywho, I was actually I was kind of surprised. I'm going back to the hair. What's the matter?
I'm just wondering how we got on this topic. It's like searching. It's like searching Wikipedia. You want to learn something about the ancient Mayans, and you end up off on some tangent, looking up ancient Sanskrit.
Yeah, hairless guinea pigs or something.
You learn Sanskrit, or you're like researching saltwater crocodiles or whatever.
For example. Hey, Shelly, welcome in. Good afternoon.
Hey, Shelly.
Good to see you. Oh, to see you.
Had two sandhill cranes in the pasture this morning out there dancing.
Oh boy, here we go. We have guinea pigs, frogs, and fish on my nighttime stream. On your nighttime stream, everyone talked about eating frogs and fish. Now you're eating guinea pigs. Well, I'm sorry. That is just, that's one of the risks you run of being here, because we may learn anything here, and some of the things are probably not the easy things, like guinea pigs can be dinner. But
if you go to Peru and go to visit those people that live in the high Andes,
you probably have guinea pigs for supper.
You'll eat some really cool, like purple potatoes, and guinea pigs.
You have sandhills up your way now, Shelley, or have they gotten there yet? I don't know if they've gotten up that high. They probably have. I love to watch them fly over. They're loud. They're noisy. Now here we go. We're on sandhill cranes now. Thank you, Shelley. No, actually, Mark said this. Thank you, Mark. Yeah, he had two out in front of his house this morning.
Yeah, they were out there jumping back and forth at each other, getting ready to do some nesting.
So they were out. They were actually doing the courting dance stuff.
They were courting, yeah.
That's cool. You don't get to see that a lot.
No,
I haven't had any. I don't think I've seen any fly over here this year, and it may all be further north by now since it's warmed up. But we usually get a few, and we always have some. And we've gotten more now that there's a bunch of them spend the winter now in the Hiawassee area. And that's usually a big deal. They have a Sandhill Crane Day down there now and all kinds of stuff. And that's kind of cool. I mean, it's sort of a you build it and they will come scenario. They created a waterfowl refuge down there more to improve duck habitat than anything, but it turned into being excellent Sandhill crane habitat. Now they've got a few thousand that's come in there every winter. I don't know how many they think they've got now, but they started out with a few and then a couple of hundred. Now they've got a few. They got at least 14 or 15,000 that come in down there, I think. Maybe more now.
Sweet.
Yeah. And of course, they got, just like everything, you get some complaints. They eat a lot of, they get off res, they get off the res down there and eat, get into people's cornfields and such sometimes, but I don't think it's all that bad, really.
So, Shelley, are your bucks still packing antlers? They still butting heads that way, or had they shed already and just were bumping foreheads?
I don't know if ours have. I was trying to think if I saw one run across the. I was just telling Brenda that, and I don't remember if it's because I actually saw one out in the car, or if it was something on the news the other night. But I saw a buck that still had antlers, and I thought about you because yours are shed, or a lot of them have.
Yeah, but we still,
big ones.
Our little bucks are still packing antlers, which is odd. It's awful late.
He says they were on their hind legs kicking at each other.
Oh, yeah. They'll do that. Does too.
I saw it. Mark, you told me a story one day this week about a wild ram that had to be put down because he was, as in a bighorn sheep.
He was killing domestic sheep.
He was killing domestic sheep by, putting his head down and butting them. And it's funny, not funny, but funny because the day or two after you told me that, I was watching some show or on here probably, and this lady had goats. And no, it wasn't. It was the other night on. Actually, it was Monarch Moments, I think. They were out somewhere in California doing a live stream, and they went to an area out there, and they had a lot of goats in the pasture there, and you could drive along through there, and they had a couple of young billies got cutting up, and they were doing the whole headbutting thing, ran up on their hind legs and whamming into each other, and not quite as seriously as a couple of bighorn sheep do, but they were doing the headbutting thing. They were standing up and falling into each other just like you see.
We had one at our research facility in captivity that was a big mature bighorn ram, and he didn't have anybody to butt heads with, so he butted heads with a big old cottonwood tree, and he would stand up on his back legs and hit that tree so hard you could feel it in the ground.
Wow.
And I mean that tree was about probably 25 30 inches in dB8 in diameter.
Yeah.
And he had taken all the bark off of one side of that tree where he hit it all the time. But you could literally, if you were standing within 10 or 15 feet, it was like a little earthquake. It was amazing.
There's a video out about, I'm trying to think what the actual topic is, but they're showing, it's like a wildlife interaction with people kind of thing. And there's a ram somewhere, and I'm sure it's a national park or something. There's a truck sitting there, like a black truck that's, highly polished. And he can see, the ram sees himself in the side of the truck and starts ramming the ram, the truck.
That's at Sinks Canyon and over by Lander, Wyoming. And we had to get rid of that sheep. He destroyed lots of vehicles.
Oh, did he really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And he just like you say, he would come up to the vehicle and see himself in a reflection, and then he would
attack the vehicle.
He would wham it, and I mean, they're serious. They've got serious skulls.
I bet they could cave in the side of a vehicle pretty quick.
Yeah. And we had that ram we had to get rid of over in Bags. He was killing all those domestic. I think he killed 17 domestic rams, and then he crippled 2 horses. So he had to go away.
Did he butt them in the sides, or did he hit them?
He was hitting them in the legs, and yeah.
Yeah, we all look forward to Shelly's pictures when she gets some new ones. So I'm looking forward to some blue herons and the like. That'll be cool. We have herons here pretty much year round now, Shelly. I don't know. They probably move north and south, but there's always some around. And then some summers they're just. I've seen them. In a neat place I used to see them was below some of the dams on the rivers here, but when they're generating, it churns up a lot of small fish and things, and there's just a lot of activity. And I've seen great blues literally line the bank, look like fishermen just all along the bank of the river below a dam, and they're just in there, bang, eating away, having a big time. And it's pretty fascinating how they adapt to that kind of opportunity, feeding opportunity. They do adapt. I mean, wildlife, we do a lot of damage, and some of it is not as adaptable, but they do adapt. And if you think about it, big predators do too. I mean, bears and cats, they move right on into town. The problem is they don't coexist very well, so we tend to put an end to it. But they actually can get used to a lot of things. Oh, excuse me. Okay, well, we started out talking about ancestry. Now we're talking about the descendants of bighorn sheep and great blue herons and sandhill cranes. But anyway, go back to the original topic. It's fascinating stuff to trace back your history. I mean, at least for the most part. I keep waiting for the horse thieves to show up, and I bet there's one in there somewhere. I just hadn't dug him up yet. I know we've got some that spent some time in prison, some in recent history, and most of them in back history. It seems like one of my ancestors was in prison in England, or maybe Ireland. And I don't know what it was for, but I'd like to think if he was Irish, I'd like to think it's because he was, spitting on the Brits or something. No offense to my British friends here, but how it is. And
one of my most interesting guys that I dug up when I did all that searching for Dad. I traced every line of the family I could as far back as I could, and he and his people had immigrated to Virginia in the 1600s, but before that he was a cavalry officer for Lord Oliver Cromwell.
Really?
And that's the dude. That's the guy that they got rid of Charles I, King of England.
Yeah, they did.
So Yeah, and he was like Oliver Cromwell was famous or famous for all of his men and he invented the cavalry tactics that we still use today.
Oh, really? I didn't realize he was
And
that big in that.
his men were he did not select men from like the landed class, from the upper classes. All of his guys were just like common dudes but they were handy with horses and battle, I guess. So, but yeah, they were part of the whole thing to get rid of Charles I.
Weren't they called round? Was it Cromwell's men that were called the Roundheads?
Maybe.
I think that either the helmets they wore or the way they cut their hair was real regimental or strict in that regard. Yeah. And I think they were known as the Roundheads too at one time, or part of them were. And was he executed also?
Cromwell?
Yeah,
I don't recall.
I'm not sure, but your relative, your ancestor was part of his cavalry. Is that what you said?
Yeah, but then he immigrated to
America,
Virginia, 1630 or 40 or something like that, and he and his son, this guy was almost 100 when he died.
Wow.
And he and his son died on exactly the same day in Western Virginia. And I always wondered if it was, they didn't say the cause. I often think it was probably,
I'd say they ran into hostiles.
They ran into some folks in the woods.
That would make sense, unless they shot each other. That's amazing to live to be that age. Well, wait, you said he was 100 when he died?
Yeah, and they
both died together.
And it was not natural causes. I couldn't find out exactly what had happened.
They've run into somebody.
I mean, they could have drowned in a river, or who knows? But
well, that's true too. Yeah, that's true.
But
could have been bit by a raccoon.
That was the amazing part to me. If you like trace your family back, I couldn't believe how many people lived to be a ripe old age, and we've talked about this. I think people say, well, if you live to be 30 or 40, you were lucky, and I don't find that to be true. And at least the stuff I've looked at, it's if you could live to be, if you got out of adolescence, you were lucky. But then if you did, you had a pretty good chance of living.
I think so too. I think that depended on the times and the
environment. You look at the data set, and it's what brought down the average age of death was all the childhood mortality.
Infant mortality.
Yeah,
and infant mortality was huge.
Amazingly high.
Yeah, I mean, if you know families from this part of the world. If you look around at graveyards in Appalachia, and I'm going to say this was bad only because I've looked at more graveyards here, and it was more rural and there was less medical care of what little there was even. But infant mortality was huge here. You go to a graveyard like up in the mountains, and you find a lot of really small stones, and a lot of them are hand carved stones that people have scratched out on rocks. And you see a lot of infants that lived a week, a day. Some died at birth. Some died within weeks, or maybe by the time they were 3. And I think you're right. I think that's what pulls the data set down, is there were so many infant deaths and so many young children that died from various causes. Not all disease. Sometimes it was an accident. Maybe they did get their hand in the saw blade or whatever. I mean, different things happen, but. Mm-hmm. That's really what drew the statistics down, because I see that in my own ancestry searches. There's actually quite a few of the people that I have found that lived to be at least 60 years old. Yeah. And that's older than I thought most of them lived. And you're right. I think once they made it, if they weren't a soldier or a warrior, and that sort of thing obviously would drive the numbers down. But if they were just a normal person that didn't have those other kinds of environmental issues to deal with, they could live to be a ripe old age, and it wasn't that uncommon. I think like you said, I think it's a lot more common than people realize. It's just getting to that point that made all the difference. Disease, accidents, snakes. I mean, there were. I don't want to say snakes. I shouldn't say snakes, but just things like that happened, and it really took a toll. And then if something like the cholera blew through, or smallpox, that really hit everybody, and that again dropped the numbers artificially.
Right.
And it really changed those stats. I mean, if we were still dealing with those kinds of things, we'd be the same way. I mean,
right.
We'd still be having a much lower number, and to some degree, COVID's going to affect that down the road, but it's going to be more of a different age group, a different cohort, I think. But it's going to knock out the upper end number down some. But that's a statistical thing. But yeah, it is amazing that some of them did actually live. There's a lot of them that didn't live to be old, but there seems to be more that did. And it really is interesting when you start tracking them down and really looking at them and seeing, how long they lived. And because I've had some ancestors that lived to be pretty old too. And, it is interesting when you go to chasing it. It's, yeah, you ought to, if you haven't done it, you ought to. I mean, for one thing, I think it's your ancestry and your heritage used to be an important thing to people. I mean, it was something that got passed down, whether it was for the right reasons or the wrong reasons, or just so you could so the Stewarts could dislike the Campbells. I don't know, but it got handed down vocally and then in written form. And, again, I don't know, you guys can speak to this. You're in different parts of the country, but in my part of the world, rural peoples usually had family Bibles, and somewhere in those family Bibles, there's usually a history. I've got one here that came from, I believe, the Sensabaugh side of my family. I don't know, it might be the Pruitt side, that goes way back, and it's got a lot of birth dates and death dates and all that kind of stuff written in it. And that's how people used to record that stuff. It wasn't unusual for them to have a family Bible that literally was handed down. And in the front of them, they had pages that were really designed to do that, but they would write that kind of information in there. We quit doing that.
Well, that's a key source of information. If you really start chasing stuff down, it's like, particularly in Western Europe,
yeah,
Germany, France, England, etc. You've got those family Bibles that were key to preserving or baptism records at the church or whatever. They were key to being able to trace some of this stuff.
That's pretty fantastic, Shelley, that she's 98. Will be this year, I believe you said. How's she doing? Bloodlines don't I think I learned that with the DNA test. That's true, Shelley. I've learned that too. I mean, I've learned a lot through the DNA thing, and there's still things to learn, and I think in some ways it's getting better. Mine has changed a little bit from when we originally did it, but it's changed a bit more. It didn't really change that much. It kind of focused on a few areas more than others, but if nothing else, it's been an interesting test to put me on a path of trying to figure out some of that. And it has helped. And what I find fascinating now is folks that can look at your DNA and start comparing it with other DNAs. And, she's in Riverton. I'll tell Mark he stepped out, but I hope he'll see that. There's people now that can look at your DNA and track it down and find cousins and uncles and aunts. And, it's amazing sometimes who we find out we're actually related to. And I guess when you get right down to it, I've told Brenda this many times, we're going to track ours back to eventually figure out we're cousins or something. Because when you get to Europe, the bloodlines started to spread out more, and then they start kind of coming back together to a degree.
And it might take a couple of centuries, but sooner or later, it seems like the branches cross. Unless you grew up in certain hollers in Tennessee, and then they cross real quick. That's a whole nother topic.
Your family tree becomes a stick.
Yeah. Or it just stays a stump, one or the other. You see what Shelley said about her I think it's her grandmother, lives in Riverton, Wyoming.
And she's 98.
Yeah, where is Riverton?
It's northeast of me. I was talking about that bighorn sheep that was breaking cars at Sinks Canyon.
Is that up that way?
It's about 40 miles from there. Kind of northeast of Lander, Wyoming, right on the east edge of the Wind River Indian Reservation.
Oh, okay. Shelley, and you don't have to say, of course, if you don't want to. You're in Michigan, but have you always been a Michigander or Michigese? Michigoose? Apparently, I got 0 Native American with my great grandmother
who was a Choctaw.
Huh? But 2 out of 3 of your children showed Native American. Well, it's somewhere in there.
So we've seen the same thing. Like my wife's people, she's got she actually, and we can trace it back literally with the documents. She's got a family called Benj that were Cherokees that went to Oklahoma during the Trail of Tears, and actually one of them was an officer in the U.S. Army and helped escort his people to Oklahoma.
Yeah.
And then his father his grandfather was a bad dude. If you were a white person in rural Appalachia, he was a bad dude because he was good at hunting white people, but he was half Scot.
Well, there you go.
And he, and so she and her sister did the DNA thing, and Shauna comes up with like, there's a lot of native DNA in her background, and her sister, when she did it, it didn't show up.
Interesting.
And then all the kids, it shows up in all of Shauna's kids, our kids, shows up in them. But her sister, who's her real sister, it doesn't like show up.
Interesting.
And I don't know if it was a different test or what, but. And then Shelley's saying she's originally from Nebraska, which is where my people are from, or where my wife's people are from.
Yeah, that's right. I knew somebody was from Nebraska. I didn't think it was you. When you said that, I started thinking, nah.
They had moved from Oklahoma. Her Cherokee people had moved from Oklahoma up to Nebraska.
Nebraska?
Yep.
Yeah, Shelley, I'm sure that's true. A lot of names weren't put on the Trail of Tears list.
But yeah, if you look at Benge as their last name, and there's a gazillion of them down in Oklahoma on the Dawes rolls, the Indian rolls down in Oklahoma.
Yeah, my mother-in-law, this is one that surprised us, and I guess there's still that chance that we might do it again, probably. Maybe try a different test, but Brenda's mother was born in Oklahoma. Now, just because of that doesn't mean you've got native blood, but there's a real good chance of it.
There's a high likelihood you're going.
And Brenda's grandmother was there, of course, and born and raised until then. They moved to California during the Dust Bowl, and her mom was still pretty small at that time. But her grandmother remembered it well and showed me pictures and talked to me about it. I really wish I'd gotten more of her stories. But she showed me pictures of her grandparents. And they couldn't have looked more Native American. I mean, they looked like something Edward took. You know who I'm talking about, Edwards. the Native
Yeah,
American
yeah.
photography. I mean, they looked Native American as they could be. The cheekbones, the skin coloration, as best you could tell in a black and white photo. But I mean, they looked it, and she thinks they were, but they denied it. They wouldn't. They never would say. And so, you know, what was said there, I missed that.
I am born.
Mama was from Mississippi, father from Nebraska. They met in New Jersey in the Air Force. I am born and mostly raised here in Michigan. Set aside, I missed that. Set aside a couple of years in the South. I am born. Mama says the DNA test lied because I have those native traits. Well, yeah, it makes you wonder. Like I said, I was sad mine didn't show up on anything. I really was hoping I'd have something. You know.
And I have it on both sides.
Yeah.
And I actually have like know who they were and or have names and it shows up in mine and it shows up in my wife's, but
different tribes in that case.
Yeah.
Well, I guess so. Yours that you know of is mostly Shawnee, isn't it?
Well, on Dad's side, and then Mom's side, it was an Iroquois woman.
Okay.
She was a Seneca woman, but yeah, that's all pretty well documented, and they even have a photograph of one of them. So,
well, that's cool. I got to find those.
And that kind of stuff wasn't like popular.
Oh no.
I mean, it was like, you married an Indian woman or vice versa. Usually a white man married an Indian woman. And it was because that was who was there. I mean, if you wanted to get married and you lived in a certain part of the country, that's the people that lived there.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't like today, I take a great source of pride of it. I think it's cool. But back in the day, it wouldn't have been, with
and it was denied. I mean, it was
all the racial stuff that went on that was worse in the past.
Yeah.
You got a certain title if you married an Indian woman. I mean, and unfortunately, that's just the way it was.
And that's why Brenda's grandmother felt like her grandparents denied it. She just felt like they just didn't want to talk. They didn't want to admit it or talk.
Yeah, because you got treated badly.
Yeah. That's why I think that's another reason I think there might be Melungeon in my family, and nobody talks about that either, because again, they weren't treated well, and discrimination amongst Melungeon was about the same as it was against African Americans,
right,
at the time, and were often even called the same names, and so but people came out of the mountains, literally, in the hollers, in that part of the state, and moved down into the lower counties to look for work and things, and it's just that whole family looks like they could all be born on the sandy beach of the Mediterranean. I mean, they just all look that way. They're all dark complected. They're all black.
I always remember your mama being olive skinned and
yeah. And she never sunburned. She just tanned. And my brother and I are pretty much that way too. I mean, I'm lighter complected probably in general than she was, but I had the same traits. And but then I got things from my dad's side too, which is mostly Irish, Scottish, that end of the family. But I think there's something there, and like I said, there was a little bit of Mediterranean in my ancestry, and I think that's where it may have come from, and which would just make sense. And my mom was born and raised in Hawkins County, Tennessee, which is pretty much the capital of Melungeonism is Hawkins County. They were west of where she grew up in the mountains part of the Sneedville area. Is where a lot of them are, and there's a lot in parts of Kentucky too, but a lot of that. Did
you just say Melungeonism?
Yeah, I did. That's not a term. I just made that up.
Yeah, I like it though.
It fit kind of.
It reminds me of some Western movie, and the guy was if you've ever seen the movie Geronimo with Wes Studi, he played Geronimo in a movie back in I think it was the early 90s.
I remember it.
And sheriff from Bisbee or Tucson or somewhere caught him coming back in, or ran the little army detail to ground, and was going to take Geronimo and his little band of patriots into custody. And one of the charges was hostile Indianism.
Oh gosh, what a term, hostile Indianism.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can see that, I guess. Lord knows that would be probably a hanging crime too, or a shooting crime. All my squirrels are gone. All activity is quiet outside. It must be lunchtime. Which, look at the clock and it's 12:30, so it's probably time to draw this up to a close too. I appreciate everybody that's come in and participated in the talk. Ancestry, I think, is a very interesting subject. Even when it turns up things you never thought. I mean, it can open up so many doors, and sometimes it explains things. I mean, who knows? Maybe our ancestry explains why Mark builds handmade bows, and I've always liked swords and stuff. Knives. I don't know. Maybe those kind of traits get handed down. We don't even think about it until we grow up and look them up or something. I'm glad you got here too, Shelley. It's always a pleasure to have you in the chat. And I know some people can't make it in on a Saturday morning, but it's just kind of a standard coffee drinking time of day. And I look forward to having you on at night sometimes. In fact, I'm going to probably continue to do my evening show, at least for now, and see how it goes. So I invite you to look for that. If I'm going to do one this week, I'll put out another notice. But Shelley says their DNA has been printed upon. Thank you, Carol. Squirrels and all. And this is a topic that could come up again because there's so much more to learn. Brenda gets on the computer a couple of times a week and just looks at genealogy links and things that could be related, and it almost always comes up with something interesting to me. If it all ends up that I'm descended from a baker out of Rotterdam or something, I guess that'll be just the way it is. But so far, that's not been the case. So far, it's been.
But that's cool too.
Yeah, you're right. That's cool.
Finding all that stuff you had this dirt bag in your family, or that, what? It's just neat stuff.
Well, it is. It's very true. It is, and it's fun to do, and it's fun to read about, and for me, it makes me want to just dig up more and more info is what it does. I mean, it's history and I love it. And it's just another reason to dig into it and see what roles we played or what part we might've taken and all that. So like I said, I keep looking for the horse thief to pop up, and sooner or later, there's probably going to be one. But, right now, all I'm finding is other type things, sea captains, and I'm sure there's a blacksmith or two in there, and who knows what else. But we'll see. We'll see in time. Oh, tacos! You're making me hungry now. Man, I watched I saw Kent Rollins make some tortillas the other night, or some burritos the other night on.
He's such a great guy.
Something must have made my mouth water. Man, they were good. They look good.
I watched a little bit of him yesterday. He was making it was a dish I never heard of. It was a Mexican dish, and he was making it on a great big disc blade. A big like a plowing disc kind of blade, and they had welded the center closed on it where the shaft would go through,
right,
and made like a big wok out of it. And he had it all.
What I was getting ready to call it.
he had it all black and seasoned. It looked wonderful, and he was cooking he was making a big meal for his like neighbors, and he was cooking all these different meats and vegetables and things in that disc blade. And golly, and then of course he was cooking tortillas at the end, and it just looked wonderful. And it's a dish out of Chihuahua or Sonora that when you want to put on a big feed for like your neighbors, you do this kind, and it had all kinds of meats and, like I said, peppers and tomatoes and onions. And it just looked wonderful.
I'll have to
And
look at that one.
now I'm really hungry.
Yeah, me too. I'm going to have to find me a disc blade now. I've probably thrown a lot of them away in my life. But I might have to just, if nothing else, I can I hate to put it this way, Taco Bell will be better than nothing.
Well, and he was cooking on his big outside wood stove.
Yeah, he's got a really nice outside wood stove.
And he had the shape of that disc blade. It was like I said, it was like a wok, and he'd cook stuff down in the center in some oil or bacon grease or whatever. And then he could move it up the side and kind of put it to the side.
That would actually be easier to do.
And it'd still stay warm that way.
Right. Yeah.
And he cooked all this stuff, about a half an hour of cooking. And it was good stuff.
Good morning, Garrett. You're up bright and early today. But you're on the road, aren't you? Are you on the live stream right now? If you are, I'll come over and say hi in a bit. I think they might be in Southern California. I'm not positive. I know they were traveling last night. Anyway, yeah, that was. He's a good cook. I've been watching him for a while too, and didn't realize turns out you know him, so that's even better.
And he beat Bobby Flay.
Well, that's a good thing. I mean, heck.
He won second in like a barbecue deal outside cooking on what's that other show? Chopped.
Oh, Chopped, yeah.
And then he won a second in like nationally in that, and then he won. Bobby Flay used to have a show that he did where he went to the people he'd go to their bailiwick to cook. And of course, Kent Rollins had him come out to a cowboy camp, and they cooked outside, and he whooped him pretty badly in that event. So,
Kelly, that's a really good point. I mean, I love cooking outside in a Dutch oven. I'm not a Dutch oven expert, but I've used it and can cook in it. And I like to cook over a fire too. I used to do a lot of camp cooking when Mark and I ran around together when we did events and things and encampments with people. And if you get to where you can fry eggs on a campfire, you can draw in a lot of attention because people like to come. People will show up out of nowhere and ask, looking for an egg with a plate, and it takes a little bit of training, but mostly just takes patience. You just got to get the fire right. That's the key to it. And
I've got about 8 Dutch ovens in here in the kitchen, and I
do you really?
And lots of skillets, and I love Dutch. I use Dutch oven here at the house pretty regularly.
I won't need to bring any cooking stuff out. Of course,
when we go to elk camp or whatever, we get a lot of that stuff.
I bet.
So
I've got a few good skillets, but I don't have a good Dutch oven. That's something else. Or I'm going to ask you this before I go. Did you buy new ones, or did you get old ones, or were you able to find antiques? Or
all of mine were previously owned.
Cool.
But they're pretty common out here. I mean,
I imagine so. Well, they're not uncommon back here, but more skillets and stuff back here because that's people use a lot of that. But
yeah.
So this is Michelle driving, not Garrett, and right now they're in LA traffic. Well, that's exciting. I bet Garrett loves that. He just was in that last week. Camp
just
food, there's something about camp food, even if you burn it, it's still good. I mean, I'm not an advocate of burning your food, but I mean, it's just when you eat outdoors and you're doing outdoors things, it's all better.
Food tastes better outside.
Food tastes better. Thank you, Shelly. And have whatever you get for lunch. Enjoy those tacos. Actually, tacos. Yeah, you said that. All right, guys. I'm going to close this up so everybody can go eat now because everybody's hungry. And, you know, I may have to cook some tacos myself. I don't know. That all sounds really good. So, thanks everybody for showing up. If you don't forget, hit that like button in the corner. Leave a comment according to everybody that tells me that helps the channel. And I guess analytic wise, somebody picks it up statistically and does something with it. But anyway, have a good weekend. Have a good rest of the weekend. A good week next week. I've got you can think, you know, I got my big PET scan on Monday, so hopefully that's going to go well. I'll just throw that out there. I've mentioned it before, but I just hadn't talked about it a lot. Hopefully it's not a big deal anyway, but we'll see. And if it is, we'll take it in stride and keep moving from there. Carol, thanks for being here. Tina, always. Shelly, glad you made it. Anybody else that's still here? Michelle, glad you guys popped in, and I'll see you online later probably. And but anyway, everybody have a great day, and if the good Lord's willing and the creek don't rise, I'll see you back here again next week. See ya.